Hey everyone, my name is Matthew Simbanis, and I'm a certified public accountant. My firm is based in Long Island, New York, and today we are going to discuss how over 150 investment firms have left New York. They took over 1 trillion in assets under management, and how to possibly capitalize off of it and make some money. So as the headline reads, New York has lost over 1 trillion in assets, or at least assets under management from other people's money, all across the world for that matter, not just the country, all across the world, and obviously in New York. Um, since 2009, and really since COVID hit, over 150 Wall Street firms have left. They moved their headquarters down south, in general to Florida, some Texas and some Tennessee, but predominantly Florida. They also took their employees with them, to the tunes of tens of thousands of employees, and that includes tens of thousands of jobs and other jobs that those jobs were then generated. All right. So some of the companies that left: Icahn Enterprises, also Carl Icahn, who took a beating since he left. He was hit by some nasty accusations from some short sellers, but he moved out in August of 2020 for Miami, Florida, and he took 24 billion in assets with him. Elliot Management moved to West Palm Beach, Florida. They took 60 billion in assets with them. Ark Investment, also Cathie Woods, who invested very early on in Tesla, took 25 billion with her to Florida. Alliance Bernstein, who is not a very well-known company, but they're a huge investment company, that, if you're in the investment world, you're more than aware of them. They relocated to Nashville, Tennessee, and they took 685 million in assets with them, including over 1,000 jobs. And by doing that, they saved over 80 million a year in expenses. And why did they go to Tennessee? Not to get sidetracked, but the cost of living is 42% cheaper there than New York. And that works out to the cost to operate in New York, or New York City, is $94 per square foot. To operate in Tennessee is $31 per square foot. Goldman Sachs is still in New York. They haven't left yet, but they are currently investing $500 million in Dallas, Texas, where the cost of living is 40% cheaper. And they received 18 million in tax breaks, and they'll be bringing 5,000 new jobs there. Whether that's new jobs or current jobs coming from other states, which I believe it probably will be, that's also going to probably be another drain on New York. So what's the effect on New York? In 2022, Wall Street accounted for 16% of all economic activity in the city and 7.3% statewide. When you consider that New York's tax revenue is about $60 billion per year, that's a massive amount of money that they're accounting for. And in 1990, 33% of jobs in New York were financial industry jobs, and now they're only 17.6%. So there's a huge amount of financial jobs in the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and it's gone down by half since then over 30 to 40 year period. The New York State Comptroller, Thomas DiNapoli, said we could see a significant decline in tax revenue, which I don't know why he said we could. We are going to, and it's going to have substantial negative impacts. As of June 30th, New York reported a 20% decrease in tax collections, including an annual loss of approximately 300,000 residents. So yes, New York State's a big state. Yes, there's millions of people, but 300,000 is still a lot of people to leave. A quarter of financial service firms plan to reduce their corporate footprint in New York in the next 5 years. So obviously 25%, I don't know how many are left. I guess I'd have to look into it. But at the end of the day, that's a huge number. And the more they leave New York, the more, New York isn't reducing their budget. As their tax revenue goes down and continues to go down, they're not going to say, hey, we have to reduce our budget. They're going to say, how do we raise taxes more? So it'll be a severe drain on economic resources and social benefits and programs. why are companies leaving, and is it deserved? So first and foremost, I personally, as I said before, I live in Long Island. I'm in New York. I grew up here. I'm about an hour away from the city. I haven't gone to the city since COVID hit. I refuse to go there. And you couldn't pay me enough to go on the subway because it's super dangerous. As if you're paying any attention to the news, I'm sure you know. And before the issues recently that started, it was still pretty much a cesspool since COVID hit. So there was rampant crime at the time. There were lockdowns. There's absurd taxes here in New York. The cost of living is through the roof, and you have a low quality of life. And if you're asking me why I'm still here, that's a great question. And at some point, I will be buying a second house or a second home out of the state, or I'll be moving out of here entirely. You know, I feel right now personally that I make a lot of money from being in New York because we can charge New York prices. So I plan on staying here for the immediate time. But I also do have on the back of my head that either I'll be buying something out of state as a secondary home, or I'll be moving out entirely with my firm. So why leave? Rampant crime, the lockdowns, which obviously we now know that the masks and the lockdowns didn't do anything to prevent the spread of certain stuff, which we shall not name. And, you know, I was thinking about doing it. I'm not going to. But if you look up the New York Post any day of the week, you'll just see violent crime, violent crime, violent crime in New York City. Subway attacks. I mean, it's just terrible. It's deplorable. And we have absurd bail laws. Apparently, they called it bail reform laws, which basically should have been called you don't go to jail and you don't stay in jail if you can't post bail, because pretty much everybody posts bail. It's completely insane. But that's unfortunately part of the deal with the current leadership that we have, which is a poor leadership. And speaking of taxes, so I'm a CPA, I deal with taxes all day. And just to go over some of the types of taxes in New York, we have sales tax, we have real estate taxes, we have highway use tax, we have IFTA tax, we have New York City commercial rental property tax, we have income tax, metropolitan commuter tax, which that would be a whole other video for another day that I don't want to get started on a tangent about. We have corporate tax, we have alcohol tax, we have cigarette tax, we have combat sport tax, which is crazy to me. We have an estate tax, we have estimated taxes, we have fiduciary taxes, we have hazardous waste tax, miscellaneous tax, which I still don't know what that is, and I don't have the patience to even look into it because it'll probably frustrate me or annoy me, to put it a little more directly. We have a tire tax, we have a motor fuel tax, partnership tax, wireless communications tax, real property transfer tax, and more. So you're pretty much taxed every which way. But the biggest ones are obviously the sales tax, which, believe it or not, I'm a proponent of that from an economic standpoint. And the real estate tax, I feel like it's completely absurd, because all you're doing by paying real estate tax is paying the town or the state or the county or all three of the above to rent the property that you live on. So I am not a proponent of real estate tax, and I would be happy if there was more of an offset to lower the property tax here and to increase the sales tax. And on the flip side, to give you an idea, I have the cheapest property taxes in the neighborhood. I have about half of an acre, and I pay about $10,000 a year in property taxes. Anywhere else, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Midwest, anywhere pretty much other than Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, California, I'd be spending a couple thousand a year at most on my property taxes. But because I'm in Long Island, New York, Suffolk County, everything's through the roof. So is this deserved, right? Is it justified that all these investment companies are leaving New York and New York City? Well, you have rampant crime. It's not even safe to go to the city. It's definitely not safe to be on the subway. You're taxed through the roof. And never mind that there's additional taxes inside of New York City. So if you're in Suffolk County, the tax out here is 8.625%, and 4% or 4.5% goes to the state. The rest goes to the county. In New York City, I think the sales tax there is 9 or 10%, and never mind the minimum wage is through the roof. So everything is just exorbitantly priced, and it's not like you're getting what you're paying for. You're paying for a lot, but you're getting the risk of trying to go to your job and getting sucker punched, or going on the subway and getting stabbed. So I'm going to stop harping on the negativity as much as I can, and we're going to move on to the next thing. And I'm going to say that, yes, it's deserved, and New York and New York City needs to change their leadership to correct this. It's not fair and it's not right. So why go? I wouldn't go to Florida or Texas or Tennessee because the heat is too much. That's just my own personal opinion. But Florida, Texas, and Tennessee, which is where most of these investment companies are going, have zero income tax. They're business friendly there. These companies are receiving tax credits. Real estate is much more affordable. And even if it wasn't much more affordable, you get a lot more for your dollar there. Property taxes are a lot less, which I just talked about. Labor cost is a lot cheaper. So I think I spend about $65 to $75 per week for my landscaping down south. That's probably only going to be about $35 a week or $40 a week. My house cleaner comes once every 2 weeks. I'm not even going to say what I pay her for that, but down south, again, much cheaper because everything down there is much cheaper. And I got to tell you, every time I go down south, and this one is one that I'm going to harp on, and I mean this with all due respect to my fellow New Yorkers, and maybe it's just Long Island, and maybe it's just Suffolk County, but people down south are super nice. I go to North Carolina, I'm blown away by how nice people are. I go to South Carolina, I'm blown away by how nice people are. I go to Florida, again, anything further south, people are way, way nicer, and the road rage is a lot less, people are a lot less wound up, so you have a much better quality of living. And also of note, I'd also like to bring up that California lost investment firms as well, and they left for Texas and Florida and other southern states, and they took over $1 trillion in assets as well. Citadel Investment left Chicago for Miami. Charles Schwab relocated its headquarters from San Francisco to Dallas, Texas. And Wells Fargo is investing $500 million in Texas, which is safe to say they'll probably be leaving California as well. If you're investing $500 million, I would imagine that, and again, the taxes and everything else in California, I think it would be a coin toss of which is worse, California or New York. And now for the favorite part that you maybe stayed and watched this video until, and if so, I appreciate you if you're still watching this. How to make money off of this, right? So, of course, do your own due diligence. Don't take any reliance on me. But, if these companies, case in point, Alliance Bernstein, Charles Schwab, they're making cost-cutting decisions and they're profitable, and you go and you look at their stocks, invest in them. They're obviously doing cost-conscious, smart decisions, and they're keeping their companies in check versus other companies that are going to stay here and continue to suck wind. It's completely crazy. And to just give you some ideas, Alliance Bernstein, they've been around forever. They have a beautiful, I think, an 8 or 9% dividend yield. Charles Schwab is an industry leader. I personally have a brokerage account with them. Wells Fargo, they're way too big to fail. And, they seem to have scandal after scandal, but I'm sure they'll keep on churning out their dividends and making money and growing through acquisitions. Cathie Woods is an incredible stock picker, and you can buy her investment funds as well. And if you'd like to short some stocks, you could look for, REITs in New York City to short. Or if you wanted to be a contrarian, you could look for REITs in New York City or New York that have taken a beating. But if you feel confident or you have faith in the long-term economic well-being in New York, you could go long on a REIT. So case in point, Empire State Realty Trust, which owns the Empire State Building, is trading for about $8 per share. It's super cheap. They have a 2% dividend yield, I believe. And, I'm sure that in 20, 30, 40 years, this will completely change. It'll probably, if New York City can get through the 70s and the 80s and have the transformations that it did in the 1990s and the 2000s, there's still hope for New York. Another choice that you have, if you wanted to kind of do a pick and axe play, you could look for REITs in Florida and other southern states, or you could look for companies that are going to benefit from the mass migration of everybody going down south. You could look for home builders down there. And, with any and all investments, not obviously, but I suggest a long-term time horizon. That's just what I personally do. But there's plenty of ways to make money off of this. And I think if you look to capitalize on it, you definitely will. So with that being said, I hope this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please check out some of my other videos and have a great rest of the day. Oh, and like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.